Happy Friday, first grade. Got weird hair going on, guys. Hold on, I'm gonna reset my headphones. At the beginning of the year, I would have completely started the video over if that weird hair was there, but not anymore. I've recorded too many videos to that particular. All right, we are reading chapter 13 called, do you guys remember? The Weasel. Now, if you know about weasels, weasels are usually up to no good. A lot of times, someone will they'll call a person a name, they'll call them a weasel if they're being sneaky or kind of suspicious. So if that tells you anything about weasels, they're not a furry little pet that you would like to have at your house. So we'll see what's up with this weasel. In the several days after the ice storm, before Professor Albert took Kona to Gooseberry Park again, first they had to wait for warmer air to blow in and the ice to melt. Then they had to wait for park crews to remove the devastation of fallen trees. The sound of chainsaws filled the air, leaving everyone in Professor Albert's house with a heavy heart, particularly Kona. He thought of Stumpy's cozy nest destroyed, all her treasures scattered and gone, and he wondered if he really would ever see her again. Finally, Professor Albert resumed his walk to the park, and Kona was mightily relieved, for he had hopes of hearing news there of Stumpy. With the warm weather, many animals would be out. Someone was bound to know something. When he arrived at Gooseberry Park, Kona could not help his hopes sinking a little. Nearly every tree had suffered some injury, and many had not survived at all. Large piles of sawed trunks and branches lay everywhere. The remains of Stumpy's beautiful pin oaks was among them. Still, Kona could sense in the air a spirit of renewal around him. The animals were stirring. There was life. There was hope. While Professor Albert read a book on clams, Kona took off to look for clues to Stumpy's whereabouts. He stopped to chat with a chipmunk who had just awakened from hibernation and was still a little groggy. "Are you acquainted with a squirrel named Stumpy?" Kona asked. The chipmunk yawned. "Oh, whose cabbage was it?" he sighed. Kona shook his head and moved on. Then Kona met a mallard duck who said that no, he didn't know what had become of Stumpy, but that the weasels on the west side were bound to know something. All weasels live for gossip and sensational events, and if one weasel knew something, all weasels knew it. Kona thanked the mallard and headed across the park. Once he arrived on the west side, it didn't take Kona long to find a weasel. He simply stood on a tree stump and said as loudly as he could, "What a strange story!" And sure enough, from behind a broken maple, a weasel popped out his head. The weasel ran over to Kona, sniffing the air. "What's strange?" the weasel asked. "What? What?" "It's about that squirrel who lost her babies over on the east side." "Yeah, I heard about that squirrel," answered the weasel. "So what?" "Well," Kona replied confidentially, "I hear that a dog on Miller Street—" "Do you know Miller Street?" "Yeah, I know it. Go on," said the weasel. "Well," Kona continued, "a dog on Miller Street has some treasure that belongs to that squirrel, but he can't find her anywhere, and he actually wants to give the treasure back. Now, isn't that strange?" "The dog lives on Miller Street, you say?" asked the weasel. "Right," said Kona, thinking as fast as he could. "And I hear he's planning to put a sign on his house tomorrow night, so the squirrel can find him." There's that weasel listening to Kona tell a story. So Kona is trying to take the weasel's love for secrets and gossip and trying to use it against him. "What kind of sign?" asked the weasel. "Like welcome squirrel or something?" "No, I hear that it's going to be a sign only the squirrel will know. A secret sign," Kona answered. "Imagine, leading straight to treasure." "You're sure it's Miller Street?" the weasel, who was always interested in treasure, asked. "Oh, yes," said Kona. "Tomorrow night, a sign for the squirrel on Miller Street, I'm positive." "Do you know what the sign is?" asked the weasel, his sharp little nose twitching. "No," said Kona. "Afraid not." "Then what good are you?" the weasel sneered, and he ran off to find another weasel who might know about a sign for a squirrel on Miller Street. With a sigh of relief, Kona watched the weasel run away. Then the dog turned and hurried back to Professor Albert and home, for he had a very important task ahead of him now. Before tomorrow night, he had to think of a sign. So now they have to think of a sign for Stumpy to see them. He's hoping that the weasels will all talk to each other because they're gossips and they're rude and they like to tell secrets. So he's hoping that one weasel will pass it to all the other weasels and that somehow, some way, Stumpy will hear what's going on and will go looking for this sign. The problem is, Kona doesn't know what the sign is yet because he hasn't thought of it. So now he's home at Professor Albert's with all the other animals, trying to think of what is this sign going to be. So we're going to start chapter 14. A brilliant idea. Top won't eat his pudding, and Bottom keeps trying to climb out of the box, and Sparrow has the hiccups, and I'm going crazy, Murray yelled, as Kona and Gwendolyn came into the basement that evening. I want a night off. Gwendolyn clicked her claws in sympathy. Oh yes, being a young mother can be so difficult at times. It sure can, agreed Murray, and what I need is a... Wait a minute, I'm not a young mother, I'm a bat. Gwendolyn laughed. Of course you are, dear. Well, said Murray, truth is, I think these kids believe I am their mother. I mean, I'm always the one who's got the pudding. I'm always the one who rides horsey. I'm always the one going crazy. The bat threw up his wings in exasperation. Well, tonight I hope you're the one who gets an idea, said Kona, settling Gwendolyn on top of a plastic Santa. An idea, said Gwendolyn and Murray together. And Kona told them about his conversation with the weasel in the park. The news about the sign on Miller Street will be all over town by morning, said Kona, once that weasel starts passing it around. And Stumpy, wherever she is bound to hear it. I know she'll come to Miller Street tomorrow night. So we have to give her a sign that tells her this is Professor Albert's house, that we're here. It's our only chance, because goodness knows we'll never find her. Well, let's think aloud, said Gwendolyn, ever ready to get down to business. Now, what do we know about little Stumpy that might give us some idea for a sign? She's a mother, said Kona. She likes egg rolls, said Murray. She doesn't understand what a television is, said Kona. She collects things, said Murray. The collection, said Gwendolyn. Kona, dear, is there anything from her collection we could use to signal her to this house? Kona thought of the terrible sight of the shattered pin oak in Gooseberry Park, the crews with the chainsaws, the remains of... Sorry about that, guys. I had some popcorn at lunch, and I must have gotten a piece caught. I should go back and record this whole video, but I'm just going to tell you right now. You and I, we know each other well enough. It's fine. I'm going to let it go. You're going to let it go. We're going to move on. Kona thought of the terrible sight of the shattered pin oak in Gooseberry Park, the crews with chainsaws, the remains of the cozy nest. No, he said sadly. I don't think there's anything at all left of Stumpy's collection. I didn't see a single ice cream stick or gum wrapper when I went back with Professor Albert. Besides, how would she see such a small thing at night? She will be so upset, continued Kona, losing all her treasure. Even more upset than when she lost that wonderful watch. What watch? Asked Murray. A glow-in-the-dark watch Stumpy found on a picnic table, explained Kona. She loved it, but somebody stole it. Wow, it really glowed in the dark? Asked the bat. Yes, that's it, cried Gwendolyn. What? Kona and Murray jumped at the same time. We have to find that watch, answered the crab. The watch that glows. The watch that glows in the dark. If we put it on the roof, Stumpy will see it glowing, and she'll know it's the sign. But Gwendolyn, said Kona, how will we ever find that watch? Stumpy searched and searched, and she never found it. We haven't a clue. We haven't a lead. We haven't a... Weasel, finished Gwendolyn. A what? Asked Kona. We haven't a weasel, said the crab, and we need one. As you discovered, dear, the weasels know everything. Find a weasel, and you'll find the watch. Find the watch, and you'll find Stumpy. Find me a hamburger, said Murray, and I'll find fries. Kona smiled thankfully at Gwendolyn. A good friend was good to have, but an old and wise friend was even better. Things were looking up. All right, and tomorrow we're going to revisit the weasels in yet another muckraker. Interesting. So I wonder if the weasels happen to know where the glowing watch is. All right, guys, that was fun. Sorry about the popcorn incident. I'll see you tomorrow.